I want to back up just a little bit. As we've been going through the Science of Mind textbook, we first looked at part 1, which was the nature of being, what we believe about God and humankind. And then we moved into part 2, which was spiritual mind healing. And Ernest Holmes calls it the first division, and he calls that ideation, the recognition of the power and the thought and purpose back of mind healing. Part 3 that we're entering into this week is also entitled Spiritual Mind Healing, the second division, and it's about practice, determining destiny. He says it's the technique by which we lay hold of mind power and prove its practicability. I kind of like that word, practicability, the ability that one has to practice this magnificent art of spiritual mind healing and prove it for oneself. So the title today from chapter 13 is Causes and Conditions.
Ernest Holmes says, the way scientifically to work out a problem is daily in thought, to conceive of it as already being an accomplished fact in experience. We realize the desire is already embodied in the absolute. We are dealing with nothing less than the absolute, with reality. Wow, there's a lot of stuff in there, isn't there? We need to unpack all that? Well, maybe just a little bit. He says, we conceive of it as already being accomplished, and an accomplished fact in experience. We recognize that which we wish to experience is already here. We just need to open ourselves up to that possibility and move in that direction and be able to accept it. He says we realize the desire is already embodied in the absolute. That's basically the law of reciprocity, or reciprocity, how you look at it. It's the idea that that which we desire is already a possibility in the mind of God, waiting to come forth into our experience. All we need to do is attach ourselves to something that already exists and bring it into manifestation. That's why he says we realize the desire that we have is already embodied in the absolute. There's already a form for that which we wish to experience. So we're dealing with something that is nothing less than absolute energy. It is reality. He uses the word reality a lot in this chapter, and that's why I really kind of jumped on that term reality, and I really wanted to talk about it today. This reality is not a perceived reality or an apparent reality. It's not what we've been told or convinced is real. It's a universal, absolute truth. There's a saying that only God is real, all else is representation. Only God is real. Do we recognize that reality of all that is? The Bible says, we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. That's kind of a twisty around way of looking at it, and it's kind of confusing, I think. But I think the idea behind that is we tend to look at things in our physical existence and claim those as being real. And we claim because I can see it, it is real, and that which I cannot see is not real because I can't actually experience it with the senses. That is the opposite of what Ernest Holmes is talking about, being absolute reality. That which is of God is that which is beyond our physical senses, and it's in our knowing. It's in our spiritual and mental knowing. That's why the Bible says things which are seen were made not things that. Sorry, I think things get so twisty around me. It's hard for me to read them. The things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Everything that we experience in life comes from unseen, unformed substance brought into our reality through our thoughts. It also says we walk by faith, not by sight. All of these are ideas of basically understanding what is real, as opposed to what we experience in life and assume to be real. So, the question is, do we really realize what reality is on a day-to-day basis? I think it's a matter of, once again, I think quite often come back to this idea that we go through life balancing our spiritual and our physical tendencies, or the elements of our lives which are spiritual and physical, and coming up with a balance of those two. I think the difficulty in terms of realizing reality is that we tend to look at life generally like we look at reality television. Now, most of us here probably know that there's nothing really real about reality television, right? But I know that we have talked to our children about the things that they do in their lives, and they say, and when they say, we say, well, that's not in the real world, that's not how people actually behave. And they say, well, it is, because that's why they call it reality TV, because it is real. That's how people actually do behave. I would prefer to assume that not everybody in the world acts like the housewives and the bachelor and bachelorette shows and things like that. I would like to assume that most of us don't act like that, and so therefore reality TV is not real. But I think we have been brainwashed by a lot of different influences in our lives to believe that this physical existence is what is real, and that which is of spiritual, because we can't see it, oil and water don't mix, and neither do spirituality and reality. But the truth is, the reality is, that only God is real, all else is representation of that which is real. So it's a kind of challenge to wrap our brains around that and accept I'm living in an environment that is only a manifest form of something that is actually real. Is that hard to understand, hard to grasp, and hard to live around? Well, let me challenge your basic ideas of physical reality. You know that the Earth is 24,000 miles in circumference. 24,000 miles all the way around. So by the time we start at point A and go revolve on its axis to get back to point A again, we've actually traveled 24,000 miles in one day. Now do the math. That's 1,000 miles per hour. Now it seems like we're just sitting here, right? We're actually traveling 1,000 miles per hour while we're sitting here, spinning on the axis of the Earth. Meanwhile, the Earth travels around the sun. And I don't remember how far we are from the sun. It's like 1.2 million miles or something like that.
93.
What was it?
93 million.
93 million miles?
92.8.
95.
Well, thank you. 93.8 million miles from the sun. I was way off, wasn't I? But we travel all around the sun in 365.25 days. I know that. This means we're hurling through space at 67,000 miles per hour. While spinning around in a circle at 1,000 miles per hour. Now, those of you who drive a ways to get here may go up to 70 or so, or put that in perspective and try to drive home at 67,000 miles per hour without getting picked up by the police. I don't think they'd notice. Actually,
No, don't you try.
don't try. Challenge your thinking in terms of what is real. What is real in your life? Are you really moving at 1,000 miles per hour while you're hurling through space at 67,000 miles per hour? Are you really? Can you even comprehend the speed that that is? Can you really understand reality of the physical senses? So therefore, can you really understand that which you see as being not really real, but being spiritual? Possibility waves that are collapsed into particles. That is reality. That is reality. And sometimes it takes a lot of energy for us to think about that. We've grown accustomed to accepting this physical manifest life experience as the only truth. While the ultimate truth is that this physical manifest experience is only one possible alternative. It's the one we've chosen. It is a condition that can easily be changed by implementing a new cause. We create a cause by holding a new thought, by holding a new belief system. And if we don't like the condition we find ourselves in, we are able to hold a new thought and create a new experience. Ernest Holmes says, in treating, we must turn entirely away from the condition. Never look at that which you do not wish to experience. No matter what the false condition may be, it must be refuted. The proper kind of a denial is based on the recognition that in reality, there is no limitation, for mind can as easily make a planet as an acorn. The infinite knows no difference between $1 million and a penny. It only knows that it is. And it is both of those things. I added that last part, Ernest Holmes did say that. He also says the spirit is never bound by any form or condition that it takes. It remains an unformed substance temporarily held and ready to be transformed by a new cause, by a new thought, by a new preference, by a new belief system. The nature of reality, the nature of true reality, is that it's plastic, flexible, changeable, even while appearing to be in a stable form or condition. It is always real, but we must see it as it is in reality.
Ooh, you really opened us up this morning, yes?
The
Opened us
reason
up.
to be here.
So I'm going to blow your mind a little further.
Mhm.
In quantum, non-locality would tell us that we are not traveling in all those places. We are in all those places.
And that's
Ooh.
reality.
Yeah. And quantum was around when Ernest Holmes was around. He studied it somewhat, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to take us back into a little look at how we can use spiritual mind treatment and the techniques that will assist us. So spiritual mind treatment is based on the idea of universal intelligence, the idea that thoughts are things, and that definite states of consciousness, as they become subjective, operate through a creative field and tend to reproduce themselves in form. Now that is really, really important to understand. Definite states of consciousness, as they become subjective, and subjective means the subconscious, that which is just beneath the threshold of consciousness. Subjective thought, or the state of thought, is the sum total of all one's thinking, both conscious and subconscious. So the definite states of our personal consciousness, as they become subjective just underneath, they operate through a creative field and tend to reproduce themselves in form. What this is telling us, what this is telling me, let me say this, is that I can say all the affirmations I want to. If I keep them on the surface, and don't think I'm saying don't do affirmations. I absolutely do them all the time, and whenever there's something big, they're pasted everywhere I look. They're on my dashboard, they're on my steering wheel, they're on the seat beside me, they're everywhere in my bedroom, my bathroom, my kitchen. When you're working on something big, you get those affirmations in gear. And at the same time, you have to know that those are in the consciousness, and they must move into the subconscious, the subjective conscious state of life. And that is when David just talked about, and when we talk about belief systems, those are our belief systems. Our belief systems are driving anything and everything that's appearing in the physical world. Ernest Holmes speaks of a stream of consciousness. Don't you just love those words? Stream of consciousness. He says that it is an automatic mental emanation of the subjective state of thought. That subjective state of thought that we all have is a stream of consciousness that is automatic mental emanation. It's that part of our mentality that is creative. So I was thinking about a river and how we could use the river as an analogy for the thoughts of our subconscious mind or subjective mind. And the idea that the river flows and our thoughts flow. And when we're thinking about a river, you can put a rock, a great big old rock in the middle of that river, but that water is going to continue to flow. It is going to move around the rock, and it is eventually going to wear that rock down. And any belief system that we hold is like that rock. Our flow of consciousness can change a rock, just as a river changes the rock. And so you might say to me, well, what about a dam? If you build a dam, you stop the flow. Ooh, not necessarily. That water is going to find a way to go around or under or eventually over if it is a flow of water. And so each of us has the power to make that shift. And how do we do that? That's where the practicability comes into play. Are we ever entertaining negative thoughts? And surely probably most of us are until we aren't. Because we learn that. I can remember little things in my life where I know I took on a negative idea that became my subconscious thinking about the way the world is and the way the people in the world are. And those get deeply embedded within us, but we do have the power to shift them. So positive or negative, what is your stream of consciousness? Last week I used the words from Ernest Holmes that we can cover a perfect idea, being God, with an apparently imperfect cloak. And I use the word injustices. You may use a different word. But they are the apparently imperfect form or experience that we are covering over our God as we see those instead of seeing the reality. The reality is that the nature of God is all things good. And so absolutely, yes, claim there is peace on earth. When we first changed the words to that song, we had some wise ministers in the teaching who said to us, oh, we tried to change the words to that song from let there be peace on earth to yes, there is peace on earth, but we did not do it strategically, and the congregation was in an uproar. And so we said, well, thank you for the great advice. Maybe you can relate, or anyone else that's been to other churches, because we approached it from the viewpoint of spiritual mind treatment. You would never go into spiritual mind treatment if you know what it is and say, dear God, please let me be healthy. Let me have money to pay this bill. We would never do that. So why would we ever say, let there be peace on earth? Well, I sang it for like 30 years that way. But again, it's all about what we're feeling, what we're perceiving. Changing those words simply to, yes, there is peace on earth. Why? because it is within me. I experience peace on earth, so I know it is real. It is of reality. Same thing with abundance. It is, as David said, already here. And if we say, let me have abundance to pay that bill, then we are claiming the lack of. But as we say, yes, I am abundant, I am prosperous, I am abundantly prosperous because God is, and all already is. Yes, life is whole and I experience its beauty and its fullness in my body and my life experiences today, right now. Life is eternal. So in spiritual mind treatment or healing, we are looking to uncover and neutralize what I like to call our stinking thinking. And you know, without placing any blame. It's not because you did anything wrong. It's not because I did anything wrong. And when you learn how to tweak that little twist in the road so that you can admit what it is that you are doing and how you want it to be, there is such a freedom. I remember experiencing it when I first said, and I don't remember even what it was. I just remember the feeling of like, oh my gosh. Whatever it was something that I never wanted to say out loud that I would ever think. I remember that part. And when I said it out loud, and I realized that is from a belief system within me. It has nothing to do with who I am. Wow, what freedom. We give ourselves that freedom to be. And it is beautiful. So, we want to mentally work to induce an inner realization of that spiritual perfection. Because that's what we really are. And sometimes I think we forget that. We want to pray knowing. My son used to have a bumper sticker on his car that said, know thyself. Capital S, self. Know thy God self. Pray daily, meditate daily. Can't stress those techniques enough. Learn to pray so completely that in any given moment when you feel out of balance, you can go, oh, I'm returning to balance right now. And whatever it is that we're going through just feels better. Maybe the physical form didn't change yet, but it feels better. To misquote the Bible, be ye perfect, even as life in a heavenly state of consciousness is perfect. I had to give the Bible a little credit because it does say be ye perfect. And I can remember telling a minister that I tried to be, when I had little kids, that I was really trying to be the most perfect mom I could possibly be. And she said, well, stop, because no one's perfect. And let me tell you, when I found those words in the Bible, be ye perfect, I was like, knew it. Now, she didn't convince me not to continue with it. And I made a whole lot of mistakes, dis-ease in my motherhood. But I was a perfect mother because everything I did from a place of love, right or wrong, good or bad. And you can do the same thing for two different kids and have two totally different results, correct? I don't know if I am doing that. I'm getting choked up, maybe. So keep in mind your perfect image and allow your imagination to take you on a crazy ride. Never look back at that which you no longer desire. Or as Tom says, never limit your view of life by any past experience. Important here, listen. It's not a question of failing or succeeding. It's a question of sticking to an idea until it becomes a tangible reality. And if we experience confusion in any way, we just go back to the drawing board, go back to spiritual mind treatment and open ourselves up to allowing the perfect flow of that river, that stream of consciousness to flow through us to a new answer. He says, train yourself to think what you wish to think, be what you wish to be, feel what you wish to feel, and place no limit on principle. And one final technique that he gives us near the end of this, he says, if you get stuck somewhere in all of this and you get out of right mind, ask yourself, who am I? What am I? Who is speaking? And what is my life? Because surely if we trace who we are back to the original cause, we can only know God. Perfection, wholeness, peace, joy, love, balance, and harmony. Because that is the truth of what each and every one of us is. And so it is.